Hello everyone, thanks so much for joining us live for tonight's webinar, How to Successfully Work with a Narcissist. I'm Zoe Kessler and I'll be your host this evening on behalf of PsychCentral.com. And before I introduce tonight's presenter, I'd like to remind you that you'll be able to access the complete webinar online at PsychCentral's YouTube channel a little later this week. I do try to post the videos within a day or two, so generally speaking, if you're having to leave us early, please do come back and check out the video replay and catch up. So during tonight's webinar, I'd also like to ask you to just feel free to send us any questions to Christine Hammond, our presenter, by typing them into the question area on your control panel. Now, Christine has agreed to take questions at the end of the session, but please feel free anytime it strikes you that you'd like to ask a question, just send them in and we'll get to everyone's questions if we can. We usually do make it through all of them, but we're also going to do our best to wrap up the session within an hour. Our presenter will present for about 45 minutes or so, and then we'll have our Q&A. And I'd like to introduce Christine Hammond. She's a licensed mental health counselor by the state of Florida with over 15 years experience in counseling, teaching, and ministry. Now, she works primarily with exhausted women and their families in conflict situations to ensure peaceful resolutions at home and in the workplace. And she does specialize in working with personality disorders, including narcissism, in her private practice. She's the author of a book called The Exhausted Woman's Handbook, and I don't know about you, but I really think I need to get a copy of this, but I will check with Christine later on that, because I don't know, maybe some of the rest of you are exhausted too. But anyway, she's also a writer for PsychCentral.com. And in tonight's webinar, Christine is going to share, well, she calls them simple steps to allow you to gain the upper hand in working with a narcissist. And again, if you've experienced this in your life, I have. I don't know, I've been completely perplexed, so I'm really, really excited to hear about what these steps are, and gee, are they really that simple? And in fact, I've got Christine waiting on hold here. Christine, hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much, Zoe.
Thank you very much for offering your time and your expertise to us this evening. It's a really interesting topic, and I know that a lot of people are going to be very, very interested in what you have to say. So what we're going to do is we will just switch the reins over so that we can see your presentation, and I'll say goodbye for a little while and join you again during the questions and answers. And Christine, let me know if you need me, and I'll be here. So you should have received a little, yeah, you should have received a message.
Okay.
To take it over. And if you can't see it, it might be hiding behind your PowerPoint screen. This does happen. Yeah, here we go. So thanks, and over to you, Christine.
All right, thank you so much. One of the things I really enjoy doing is being able to share with people just some of the secrets that I have learned about working with narcissists. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, and right now the timing of this webinar could not be more perfect between the two national conventions that we have going on. I'm sure there are a variety of narcissists that you can see on both sides of the aisle, and this picture just demonstrates some of the areas that narcissism is just so incredibly prevalent in our society. It's not just prevalent in politics, but also religion and doctors and TV personalities as well. Narcissistic people seem to gravitate towards these professions because they get so much extra attention for their behavior that is not necessarily always positive. What I'm going to go over with you tonight are just the four main parts, which are identifying the different kinds of narcissists, understanding what they need, comprehending their particular cycle of abuse, which is very unique, and then looking at some negotiation tactics so that you can actually thrive and do really well well when confronting a narcissist. The first part is actually identifying what a narcissist is and who that is. The narcissistic personality disorder has some very distinguishing features about a person. They tend to exaggerate their achievements to the point that some of the reality may not even be true. They fantasize of unlimited success, intelligence, power, or beauty. They believe that they are special and unique and can only be understood by other special and unique people. They require this excessive amount of admiration. It has to be all the time for them, to the point that they need it every single day. They also have a sense of entitlement, that somehow they deserve a certain type of treatment from other people. They often take advantage of other people, and they definitely lack empathy. There's almost no remorse for the things that they're doing. They are often envious of others and believe that other people are envious of them. And most importantly, they're very arrogant, and they show these behaviors on a regular basis. So if you can right now, I'd like you to just think about a narcissist that you might know in the workplace, because it helps, after hearing that definition, to kind of have a visualization of somebody. And if you can't think of someone, I have on the screen The Devil Wears Prada, and what a great job Meryl Streep did in portraying a narcissistic boss. That movie was just so well done in showing how the narcissist treats their employees and what they expect of them, and just how superior that they feel at all points in time. They're very high maintenance, even at work. They need all kinds of attention. Narcissists love to be in charge, and the funny part about this is they don't necessarily have to have the job title in order to be in charge. They can be at charge at a very low level and still think that they are the boss of everyone, including their superiors. They have a tendency to threaten fellow employees when they don't submit to what they're supposed to do, and oftentimes they'll treat their superiors even better, and they'll treat their superiors badly to their back, but they will treat them better to their face, because they are trying to win the favor of their superiors. They lack empathy, so they have no problems firing people with ease at work. They will not share credit. That is one of the key features. They insist on taking the credit even for things for which they were not fully responsible for. They believe that they are better than other people in other circumstances, and they won't apologize, and they frequently blame others for what they have done. And last but not least, they defy the rules that they don't agree with. So if you take a moment right now and you just kind of have a visual in your head of a person that at work kind of displays this attitude, it will help you a lot for the presentation. Having worked in the stock market before and as a broker, I can tell you I have many years of experience of working with narcissists in that environment, because the financial industry is just ripe with that kind of arrogant behavior, that they know more than other people. And that is one of the reasons why some of them tend to do well in that environment, because that level of confidence is what's required in order to get people to invest with you. So let's look at the different types of narcissists. I love this picture because it so easily demonstrates the huge difference between the two main types. There's the overt narcissist and then the covert narcissist. So the overt narcissist is the one that has hidden narcissistic behavior. So they are the ones that do the silent treatment. They make major decisions very quietly. They refuse to communicate, and they often play the victim. So they're the ones that are kind of saying, oh no, you know, this isn't me, and they flip everything back on this victimization mentality. The covert are the bullying ones. So they actually I have that wrong, I'm sorry. The covert were the hidden ones. The overt ones are the bullying ones. They are the aggression ones. They are the ones that are openly arrogant. They constantly insist that they are right. And they are very, very demanding in that way. So if you're looking at the slide, I actually did that wrong. So the covert, no, I did the slide right, and I said it wrong in the beginning. So the covert are the ones that are aggressive. The overt are the ones that are actually hidden. So that helps you a little bit with some of the characteristics of it. So you will frequently see an overt boss, but you would see a covert subordinate. So those would be the people that are trying to get to the top, but they can't quite get there. And those are the people that frequently don't hold on to jobs very long. They don't last well in the environment, where the overt, the aggressive ones, tend to last for a long time in a job. So now here comes the best part about it. There are 4 things that the narcissists need, and if you can remember these 4, if you get a chance, just write them down real quick or play this back again later so that you can remember it, because these 4 magic ingredients are what a narcissist needs in order to feel better about themselves. Remember, at the heart of a narcissist is somebody who is deeply insecure, and that insecurity must be constantly fed over and over again. While they project this larger-than-life personality, they have this really deep insecurity inside of themselves. So you have to look past all of that projection and go to what's underneath and see their areas of insecurity for what they are, and give them their 4 basic things that they need: attention, admiration, appreciation, and affirmation. So attention is really easy to do in the workplace. That is usually like small amounts of courtesy, just saying hello to them, you look great, oh, why don't we go have lunch today? Just some kind of attention to let them know that you recognize that they are there is usually good enough. Now, the interesting part is it's not as much the amount of attention you give them, it's the lack of kindness that they will notice the most. So if you don't give them attention, they will actually notice that you're not paying attention to them, and that will bother them more than the attention that you give. So there should always be that balance there. The next is admiration. So again, at work, this is simple statements such as, oh, wow, you did a great job on that project the other day. I can't believe how much help you were able to give me. That simple admiration for what they have done is good for them. That feeds their narcissistic supply. But be careful not to be over the top about it. Like, you don't want to put everything all lumped together, so then they start to kind of get this idea that you're manipulating them. Narcissists hate to feel manipulated, so while it sounds like we're manipulating them through this, we're really not. We're using what they need so that we can be successful in the workplace. The next is appreciation. One thank you is never enough for a narcissist. So if a narcissist at work does something for you, saying thank you one time is usually not enough. You have to say thank you written as well as verbal, maybe in a text, in a voicemail, any other place that could be verifiable later that you have actually appreciated them. Even if you could do the appreciation in front of other people, that's even better because they love that. And if the narcissist happens to say, re-mention something that they did for you, that's a signal to you that you haven't given them enough appreciation for whatever it is that they felt they gave you. The last is affirmation. So affirmation at work can just be as simple as, wow, that was a really brave thing that you did. Oh, you are just so helpful in this scenario. And especially if you can demonstrate that in front of somebody else, like not a subordinate that they don't care about. Usually this is a peer that they're trying to compete with, or it's a superior that they're trying to gain the upper hand with. And if you can do that affirmation in front of other people, the narcissist will absolutely love that, and that will fill their needs. But here's the downside of all of this. You can't lose yourself while you are feeding their ego. That is the most important thing to remember. You don't want to lose a sense of who you are and be overshadowed by them. So guard your own self-talk. You want to avoid saying things to yourself that would make you be inferior to the narcissist. So while the narcissist may be great at doing something at work, you don't want to then put yourself down and say, oh, but I'm not so good, because that immediately puts them in that superior category. Also, don't compare yourself with where the narcissist is versus where you are. The reason why they are where they are sometimes is because of their behavior, because of their aggression. They're able to get to those places. So don't compare yourself with them. Remember that their perception is very inaccurate. A narcissist will see themselves as having been so successful. They will even say things like, oh, I made $5 million in sales last year, when the reality is that probably was a combination of the last 5 years and not the last year's worth of sales. Reset your boundaries for yourself so that the boundaries are fair, realistic, or practical. But don't ever communicate your own boundaries with a narcissist. So what on earth am I talking about here? So what I'm saying is your boundary with the narcissist should be one boundary that's very good is you don't give narcissists too much information. So when you're at work, never give over more information than what is absolutely positively needed, because a narcissist will take that information and then they will run with it for their benefit. So you want to hold on to the information that you know without divulging too much. So that means answering things in short and simple ways and then quickly turning the conversation back around to the narcissist so they can talk about themselves. That's a great way to kind of like deflect and not lose something of value to yourself. The last and most important part about not losing yourself is making sure that you don't follow their immoral or illegal actions. Sometimes narcissists go to the extreme in order to be able to win and be successful. And you don't want to give up your own sense of who you are just so that you can be similar to the narcissist. That would be losing yourself. The next part I want to talk to you about is the narcissistic cycle of abuse. Now, this is something that came to me after spending countless hours with victims of narcissists and also spending plenty of time in session with them as well, and my own personal experience from having had several narcissistic bosses. So the cycle is pretty easy. It kind of follows what you would talk about a normal standard of abuse, but it has a switchback about halfway through it, and we're going to get to that in a second. So the first part is that it starts at the very top where it says feels threatened. So the narcissist feels threatened by something. That means that they had some kind of upsetting event. So maybe they got embarrassed over a project that didn't go well at work, or they were rejected or by a promotion, or somebody showed them a great deal of disrespect. But whatever it was, they felt threatened at that very moment. So when they become threatened, you can kind of see it in the narcissist. Like there's something in their eyes that starts to just kind of glare at people, and immediately they do this weird kind of stare where you can start to know that there's something about ready to happen to you. So other people, when they see that threatening response from the narcissist, they often become really nervous and very anxious, which then puts the narcissist kind of ahead of the game because they already have the upper hand at that point. The next thing they do is they move to step 2, which is they abuse others. So during that time, the narcissist engages in very intimidating behavior. And there are several ways a narcissist can be abusive. So let me just take a pause right here for one quick second and review the 7 main ways that a person can be abused, just so that we all are working off of the same page. The first is physical abuse. So physical abuse at work could even look like restraint. It could look like grabbing somebody by the arm. It could be keeping them from being able to leave a room. There's mental abuse. The key one here is usually gaslighting. This is a favorite one of a narcissist, where they tell you something is absolutely true when you know that it's not true, and then they manage to convince you that you are misled and somehow they are right. It's a technique that was born out of a movie in the 1950s called gaslighting, and it is a classic mental form of abuse. There's verbal abuse. So that could look like a verbal threat or some kind of "you are stupid" or "you are lazy," kind of one of those comments. There could be sexual abuse. That would look like sexual harassment in the workplace. So that would be any kind of intimidation from a sexual standpoint, making somebody feel kind of inferior, they're superior. And by the way, that works both ways. Women do it to men as well as men doing it to women. This isn't just a one-way kind of thing. The next is financial. So at work, that could be withholding money, withholding a salary or a bonus in order to get more out of you. It could be spiritual, so that would be more of the focus of not allowing somebody to observe their own religious holidays or take those days off, forcing people to work on days that they normally would not want to work on. And then the last form of abuse would be emotional. And emotional could be using guilt as a way of manipulating people to do things, kind of like doing the famous guilt tripping that you can see so many times. So those are the 7 different ways that a person can abuse someone. And that's how a narcissist can actually abuse somebody at work. So after a person is intimidated and feels abused, they usually do some kind of attempt to resist the abuse that they are getting from the narcissist, which is, this is the point that I was telling you earlier where the switch comes, which makes it very different from just a regular abusive pattern. The switch comes when the narcissist now feels that resistance and they immediately go to they're the victim. So it's almost as if the narcissist took the other's victim and said, "Oh no, I'm the one who's really the victim here, not you." So they will then start to say that they're the ones being abused. And a lot of times narcissists will actually project onto other people the very behavior they're doing themselves, which is very frustrating for anybody who has to deal with that. It can be so annoying to all of a sudden find that you are the brunt of what they are doing. Their warped perception then causes other people then to actually feel a sense of remorse and guilt because they don't want the narcissist to feel bad. Usually the people that the narcissist is already abusing, those people usually have some kind of self-esteem issues to begin with and feel a little bit inferior in some kind of way. So this is where the narcissist takes advantage of that whole entire situation and says, "Oh, woe is me," and then expects the other person to actually rescue them out of that situation or to feel bad for them because they are one-upping the abuse that they just did to the other person. As a result, the narcissist now feels empowered. And they feel empowered because they have actually won in this situation. They have gotten better. They have gotten more power. They've been more convincing. They have manipulated this other person very successfully. And this is a pattern that they will use over and over and over again at work. And it is one that if you're not aware of it, you can get stuck in it so easily. That empowerment feeds the narcissist's superiority and their ego all at the same time. So How do we break from this awful pattern? Because nobody wants to be stuck in this, especially at work. Well, there are many ways that you can avoid the abuse. So at the very first one, the one that we talked about before, that when you feel threatened by the narcissist, actually know what their triggers are ahead of time. The great part about narcissists is they're so predictable. Once you get away from the narcissism and you start studying them, they become very predictable in what they say and how they say it and who they go to and how they manipulate people. So spend less time getting caught up in the cycle and more time observing the cycle so that you don't fall fall into their trap and know what what the narcissist triggers are. At step 2, where the narcissist starts to abuse other people, at that point, identify the type of abuse that's being used. This is a really unique way of handling abuse. If you can step outside of yourself for a minute and say, okay, I'm being verbally abused right now. Look, that is a verbal abuse. Oh, and they switched from that verbal abuse to the silent treatment, and now they're twisting the truth over here. Become very familiar with their different types of abuse tactics so that you can see it kind of play by play as if you're reading from a script. That will help you to remain detached and not become so defensive and react to the narcissism. Resist the urge at that moment to retaliate, because that's exactly what they need in order to do the next cycle, which is the switch back into becoming the victim. So in order to avoid that whole entire cycle from happening, you got to stop retaliating and not apologize. So then that way they can't get any weight in the victimization category. Not that the narcissist won't try to be the victim. They might still try. And if they do, just make sure you're not rescuing them from their victimization, whatever it is. So they say that they're the ones being abused by their boss, or they're the ones that are having a hard time at work, or they're the ones that feel like they're not being treated fairly. Don't rescue them. Don't join in with all of that. And if they accuse you of that behavior, please do not apologize, because once you apologize to a narcissist, you will have to do it over and over and over and over again. It doesn't ever stop. That apology is a way of them gaining more power. And again, if you make it to the last stage where the narcissist feels empowered, make sure you reset your own boundaries. Go back, figure out where you went wrong, figure out what step in the equation didn't work for you and what you can do better next time. And absolutely, under no circumstances, don't disagree with a narcissist in public. That is such a level of humiliation and embarrassment to the narcissist. Always privately disagree with them rather than doing it in front of other people, especially in this case where there are subordinates or superiors in this category, because on either side of that you're going to get burned really fast, and the last thing you don't want is to be at the tail end of a retaliation from a narcissist. So now that we've gone through the cycle of abuse and exactly what that looks like, let's look at some successful negotiation tactics. So these are tactics that I came up with over working with narcissists for a long time. And I have taught my clients to do these over and over again. And some of them have even managed to work in the courtrooms when you're dealing with a narcissist in a divorce situation. And I've seen people be able to do this at work on many occasions in order to be able to disarm them so they're not so frustrated or feel fooled or tricked or manipulated by the narcissist. The very first thing I'd like you to remember is do not talk too much about yourself or other people. It's all about the narcissist. No matter where you go, what you say, or what you do, it's all about them. Avoid saying too much about yourself. especially when you're trying to make a deal with a narcissist. If you go into a deal situation where you're trying to close something with a whole long list of things that you want the narcissist to do and all these reasons why you want them to do it, you're going to fail in that, because the narcissist doesn't want to hear about what they need to do for you. A narcissist wants to hear about how great they are. So you have to rephrase things, and you have to avoid talking about yourself, even if you're talking about what the narcissist does for you. Constantly focus the conversation on the narcissist. So anytime the conversation gets sidetracked or goes sideways, when you're in the middle of a negotiation or a deal or a team meeting, make sure you rope the narcissist back into the conversation. And the way you can do that very easily is you can just ask them what they think about and then fill in the blank. And it could be something very simple, but that helps them to stay engaged and to feel like their opinion matters, which is so important for them. Make sure when you're talking to a narcissist that you always look them in the eye, even when they're doing the stare that we talked about earlier. So especially when they're doing the stare, make sure you're looking at them in the eye, because they are studying you. And when you look back at them, you're not matching weird, intimidating stare for weird, intimidating stare. Don't try to one-up them. Make sure you soften your face, but just look back at them as if you are not going to back down from what they're saying. Give them your entire full attention. That way they will feel like you are paying attention to them. And remember, that's one of the things that feeds them, right? That is meeting their narcissistic supply when you give them your full attention. Whenever you can, while you're in the middle of a negotiation, agree with them as much as possible. Even if it's over some petty, stupid little issues, such as what color paper we're going to use or what form of computer software we're going to engage in. No matter what it is, find little areas that you can actually agree with the narcissist. That will help them to feel like you're on their side. You never want the narcissist to feel like you're doing battle with them, even when you are doing battle with them. So you always want to find a way to be on their side and agree with them about something. Don't question a narcissist's judgment. So if a narcissist has cast judgment about someone or some situation, whatever it is, and no matter how erroneous it might be, don't question it, especially in front of other people or while you're in the middle of a negotiation. If you want to question their judgment, that is a thing to do later, off to the side, at some other point or time, not while you're right in the middle of things, because that makes it really difficult for them to maintain the upper hand, and they need to always feel like they have the upper hand, even when they don't have the upper hand, because at the end of this, you will gain the upper hand. They need to feel like they have the upper hand. Be very straightforward with the narcissist and very short in your explanations. So don't go on and on and on and on and on about something. Too much information for a narcissist will only be used against you. We said that earlier. I'll say that again. You never want to give them too much information at any one point in time. Find simple ways to praise them or help them to feel special. So you could say something like, you know, we really value your opinion on this. It would be great if you could give us your perspective because it's been so good in the past. A simple statement like that, as annoying as it might be for you to do for them, will go a long way to taming the narcissist. And last but not least, even when the narcissist is gloating about some deal they just did or some negotiation they managed to conquer or some legal judgment they managed to dodge, find something to admire, like, wow, it's so great you were able to do that. I can't believe you were able to get out of that. That is really amazing. That is an incredible story. Those are all good examples of things that you could say in order to show admiration to the narcissist, to feed that. Remember, that's one of our 4. to feed that narcissistic ego and tame them in the middle of a negotiation. So the next part is a confrontation tactic. So oftentimes when we go in the middle of a negotiation, we have to do some kind of confrontation. So there's something we have to address with a narcissist. So it helps to kind of look at this from, I call it the hamburger method. So here's a perfect example. So looking at a Big Mac, which, well, this quite isn't a Big Mac, but it's sort of a Big Mac-ish kind of thing. What you want to do is the bun on the top and the bun on the bottom are your complements. And then on the inside is the meat, okay? So you're looking at the meat on the inside. That is the criticism. So for a narcissist, the only way that they can digest a criticism is if it's sandwiched in between two different complements. So when I was a teacher, I often had to say to people, I often had to tell parents that their kid was failing. So here are these, listen to these two different emails and see if you can really tell the difference between them. The first is like what I would call a meat-only email. That's a bottom line email. Dear Mom and Dad, Johnny is failing my class. He is failing my class because he hasn't turned any of his homework in. If he completes it this way, he will get an F for the quarter. That is a meat-only hamburger, and that usually does not go over very well. I can tell you right now as a teacher, that was a horrible way of communicating with my parents. Now listen to the difference when I do the compliments on the top and the bottom. Dear Mom and Dad, Johnny is a delight to have in my class. Every day he comes in with a huge smile on his face. However, Johnny is failing my class. He is failing my class because he hasn't completed any of his homework. And if he continues in this pattern, he will receive an F for the quarter. I know that now that I have brought this to yours and Johnny's attention, we can all work successfully in order to be able to help Johnny succeed because he is such a gifted student. Do you hear the difference between those two emails that I just read you, the meat only and then the hamburger method where we did the compliment, criticism, and compliment? That is the big difference right there. And when you do that with a narcissist at a meeting or in the middle of a confrontation, that will help them to be able to digest it much, much easier. Now, there's a caveat to this, because there always is a caveat to these things. You can only do this one time per conversation, which means that you're really going to have to pick your criticisms out very well. Make sure that you pick the burning issues first and deal with them, and then you can drop away all of the other stuff and not deal with them later. Don't defend yourself. So don't give up any ground while you're doing this, unless you're willing to lose that ground completely permanently. When you're confronting the narcissist, remember, stay firm in the point that you were trying to make. Don't back down in any way. In the example I just gave you, if I as a teacher backed down and all of a sudden started giving Johnny good grades for work that he didn't really do, then I'm not really teaching him good things. So you don't want to do that either when you're in the middle of working with a narcissist. Also, don't use any emotion. It is really important not to use emotion in front of a narcissist. A narcissist is good at reading people, and they use that teary-eyed or upset mode in order to gain more about what they want. They have no empathy. This is so important to remember. A narcissist does not have empathy, and they're not really going to apologize for what they have done wrong. And this is not saying I'm not one political affiliation or another, so I just want to say that. But I was listening to one of the late night shows one night, and Donald Trump happened to be on, and they actually did a skit of him. And at one point in time, he was asked the question, would you ever apologize to anyone? And Donald Trump responded by saying, if he was ever wrong, he would apologize. That is so typical of what a narcissist actually says. They say things like, if I was ever wrong, I'll be happy to admit to it, but I'm very rarely ever wrong. So that doesn't really happen very much, and I'm most definitely not wrong in this situation or this circumstance. So don't expect the narcissist to actually come around and apologize for something in the middle of a confrontation. They're not going to. And if you get emotional in those moments, if you start to get teary-eyed, if you start to get upset, they will see you as prey at that moment. And they will see you as, remember that cycle that we talked about before, the abuse cycle? Now all of a sudden the narcissist is going to feel empowered because they now have you where they want you, which is you're teary-eyed and you're upset, and they're going to start that whole entire cycle. They're going to feel threatened about something, and then they're going to start to abuse you, then they'll become the victim, and it'll just go round and round in a circle. And it's very hard to pull yourself out once you get caught in their little trap. So those are the ways that you can kind of pull back and keep yourself from being caught up within the narcissistic cycle, and also be able to confront them. I hope that this was very helpful to you, and I'll be more than happy to answer some questions that you might have regarding the narcissist. I really enjoy talking about this subject. It is one of my favorite things, and the narcissists have just this tendency to constantly berate other people over and over again, which is why it's so important to learn how to gain the upper hand. If you do all of these things that we just discussed, you will find that you are able to actually not only predict when the narcissist is going to do their behavior, but you will be able to outsmart them at several different maneuvers. It will allow you to feel more successful on several different occasions. It will also empower you to keep going forward. You're going to find that narcissists exist everywhere, in every single environment, not just in the high-profile jobs, but they're in everyday jobs as well. So the likelihood, if you dodge one narcissist at one job, is that you're going to find another one in another job. So it's really important to kind of get a grasp for how to deal with them going forward so that you don't keep getting caught into their trap. Thank you very much. I'll be more than happy to take some answers to any questions that you might have right now.
Thank you, Christine. Oh, my mind is just reeling. It's Zoe speaking, the host. I have a few questions of my own, but I did want to share with you, Christine, that excuse me, pardon me, we do have a comment already that one of our attendees is thanking you for covering this important topic, and she says she really enjoys your blog too. So I'm glad someone mentioned your blog, because of course everyone can go to PsychCentral and just search your name, Christine Hammond. Christine, what's the name of your blog over at PsychCentral?
So it's called The Exhausted Woman over at PsychCentral.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So we've got the questions coming in fast and furious, and I hope I have time for mine, but let's go with our attendees. So one is asking, do you find that some people seem to be, in quotes, narcissist magnets? They end up with these kinds of bosses, partners, etc.
Yes, I do, and that is an excellent question. For instance, I find that a lot of codependents seem to gravitate towards narcissists, as well as people who are very dependent on certain relationships. Like they need other people for their own source of affirmation, and they become very strongly attached to people. And as a result, that kind of feeds the narcissistic ego. So the narcissists love to have people gravitate towards them because it boosts them up and makes them feel superior. And usually codependents and dependents are willing to allow the narcissist to outshine them. And they often make excuses excessively for the narcissist and say, oh, they can't help themselves being this way. It's because they had a bad childhood. It's because they had a horrible boss. It's not their fault. So they tend to kind of minimize the narcissistic behavior and abuse. So yes, people do have a tendency to gravitate towards that are in those two categories.
Okay, thank you very much. And oh wow, the questions are really coming in here. We have a question about what is a superstar narcissist?
So I'm not quite sure what that person means by a superstar narcissist, but I'm going to go ahead and try my best to answer it. A superstar narcissist, in my mind, would be somebody who is, for instance, the star quarterback on a football team, on a professional team, or a leading actor or actress in a movie. And so they have like superstar status. And those kinds of people have this ego that is just so superior than other people, because not only have they achieved a very unique high level that not very many other people have achieved, but they have usually done so on the backs of many people along the way. And these people need other people in their life to constantly feed that ego. So you will find like stars who will have like literally a whole little posse of people that will follow them around from place to place. That's a signal that you have a narcissistic superego going on right there, because they have to have this posse kind of following them around, lifting them up all the time.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Now we do have a question that, well, I'll just read the question, Christine. We have a question about how to support a spouse living with a narcissist.
So if you're supporting a spouse who's living with a narcissist, one of the best things you can do is help them to become aware of the things that we have already talked about. I do a lot of counseling with narcissistic spouses, and I do my best to try to open their eyes to the different forms of abuse that they have been enduring. And the most revealing thing happens usually during those sessions is when we go through a list, and it's an extensive, exhaustive list. I think it's on, I've already posted it many articles ago about the many different ways a narcissist can abuse somebody, and so there's literally seven different articles. You could go through all of those articles, print them out, and each one of them spells out a different form of abuse tactics. And helping a spouse to become aware of how they're being abused will then help them to try to do something about it. Most people are unaware that twisting the truth or giving the silent treatment is actually an abusive tactic that's being done for manipulation. So when they become aware of it, then their eyes become open to all the other areas that they're actually being abused in. And that's the best way to be supportive. And then, of course, encouraging them to get some professional help so that they can be able to deal with this going forward and figure out a strategy or plan for how to move forward in a healthy manner.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And I will share, Christine, people are really enjoying and appreciating your answers here. And we have a lot more questions. One of them is it possible? Is it possible to have a happy marriage with a narcissist?
Yes, actually it is, and I got to witness this firsthand. My father was narcissistic. He passed away several years ago, and my mother stayed married to him for many years. And while they had ups and downs in their marriage, I can tell you that the most part, my mom will tell you even to this day, that she was very happily married to my dad. And so you can be happily married to one, but you have to know that they're narcissistic. You don't get to get out of this without knowing that they're narcissistic and without understanding what they need. And those 4 ingredients that I gave you are the 4 keys in order to be able to survive, not only in the workplace, but also survive in a home environment with a narcissist. Once you understand how to feed a narcissist in a manner in which helps their ego to feel better about themselves, then it becomes easier to stay married to them. But the caveat of all of this is, if you're going to be married to a narcissist, just remember they don't do intimacy well. In fact, they do intimacy very, very poorly, if none at all. So you have to have this level of expectation that intimacy may be only one way, or it may not exist at all in the marriage. And some people are okay with that. They actually prefer not to have a very intimate marriage out of their own abuse from the past or their own suffering. And so they're very content to have a marriage that doesn't have that very deep, intimate connectedness. And so if you're okay with that, and you're able to avoid the abusive tactics that are going on in your marriage, and you're able to feed the narcissist in a healthy way without losing who you are, you can have a happy marriage with them.
What an excellent point. Yes, thank you. Thank you for introducing that perspective. Thanks. That was great.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So, gee, we've got a question here, Christine. I'm just going to share it. I'm not sure I understand it completely, but I know you'll ask for clarification if you'd like it. Okay. So here's the
Okay.
question. Does a person who can only get along or have one close bond at a time relative to narcissistic traits or a full diagnostic criteria?
Okay, I'm not exactly sure what that is referring to.
Okay, maybe we can give the person who asked the question a chance to clarify it then?
Okay,
I
that'd
don't
be
know. Do you
great.
want me to read it one more time and you can ask for a specific clarification or?
Sure.
Okay. And I'll read it with the punctuation. Does a person who can only get along or have one close bond at a time relative to narcissistic traits or a full diagnostic criteria?
Yeah, I'm not sure if we're talking about the narcissist or if we are talking about somebody who's trying to get along with a narcissist.
Yeah, okay, well, we'll wait and hopefully this person will be able to clarify it. So we'll go on to the next one for now.
Okay.
So the next one is, I think it's a comment. I found it very helpful to ask the question, quote, what would people think if they knew you were acting this way, question mark. It was successful 100% of the time to get a very discreet behavior change, even though the narcissist I was dealing with would always change their decision or behavior after stating that he didn't care what other people thought. Is this a sound approach?
It is, and that is an excellent point, but you must have a good relationship with the narcissist in order to be able to do that. You must have established some level of trust or confidence or respect in order for that to go over very well. And you can't assume that there's a natural level of respect if it hasn't been built on for a while. So I love that idea and I love that approach, and it can be very beneficial. Just make sure you're not doing it with somebody who you just identified as being a narcissist that you don't have a very strong relationship with.
Great. Okay, good. Thank you. So here's another one. For someone who struggles with transference and countertransference, does that mean they have narcissistic tendencies or are narcissists? For example, when the spouse disciplines their child, he or she will double the method of discipline used on the child when he or she absorbs the emotion from the partner, or is this something else?
Well, it could be a variety of things, but since we're talking about narcissism, I'm going to assume that that's what it's going to be about. The hard part about a narcissistic parent is that most narcissists, so narcissism is half biology and half environment. So if you think about it from the biology standpoint, somebody in the family tree had narcissistic traits or a personality disorder trait. And then for the narcissist to really fully form and be a personality disorder as opposed to just narcissistic traits, which is the milder form of the disorder, they would have to have an environment where they were talked to by a narcissistic parent. So sometimes what you find is that the narcissistic parent is just mirroring what was done to them as a child, and they are acting in the same way. And sometimes they pick up on the emotions of their spouse, and either they don't like them and then they retaliate against the child, or they pick up the emotions on the spouse and then they feel they don't feel empathy for the child, but they want to attack the spouse, and then they'll go light on the child. So in the case of a narcissistic parent, there's two categories of kids. We have one that's the golden child, and the golden child can do no wrong, and then we have all the other kids, and all the other kids do everything wrong. So the golden child is perfect, and the narcissist will always elevate the golden child, whereas all the other kids, they will be very, very harsh and unfair to.
Wow. Okay, great, thanks. Here, we have a clarification from the last question we were wondering about, and the clarification is, excuse me, yes, about the narcissist. Is that a trait of NPD? I presume that means narcissistic personality disorder, meaning can get along, meaning
You can only get
can
along
only
with just a
have
couple
along
people.
with one friend, love one at a time.
So see, narcissists don't really do intimacy very well. And yes, one of the traits of them is that they can actually not form a real attachment, but form a superficial attachment onto one person and then ignore everybody else. That's kind of what I was talking about with the golden child syndrome just a second ago. So it's the same exact concept where they hyper-attach onto one person. So it could be somebody at work. So you could have a golden child at work, for instance. And so that person is just incredible and amazing. Everybody else is crap. And so that is kind of the same thing that you can sometimes see with narcissists. So sometimes they pick favorites. That's their big thing to do. And if you are a narcissist favorite, then, you know, you're great. If you're not a narcissist favorite, then everything works against you.
Wow, that makes so much sense. Thanks. Okay, I'm aware of the time, but we still have, yep, absolutely. The person who asked the question is saying perfect, so that's great. Can we heal the narcissistic tendencies by healing the root of the trigger?
Sometimes, yes, especially if they are just tendencies and not the full-blown disorder. Remember, a personality disorder is a personality disorder is a personality disorder. That means that you have that puppy for the rest of your life. But if you have just the traits of the disorder, you can heal that through going all the way back, usually into childhood, wherever that wound actually existed, and healing that underlying wound. If you can heal that underlying wound, a lot of times the narcissism is greatly diminished, and it's not nearly as intense as it was before.
Wow, interesting. Here's another one. Christine, can we expect a narcissist to become self-aware?
Okay, so that's a tricky question because some narcissists are very self-aware of what they're doing and they have no problem being the way that they are. Others are not self-aware at all of the impact that they have onto other people. That's that whole lack of empathy. So the lack of empathy works two ways. But basically, they can become aware of what they're doing. A lot of times when I work with narcissists, I try to help them to see that some of their behavior can come across as being abusive. And so they do learn what that looks like, and they do understand it. Now, does that mean that they always stop it? No. But at least they're able to recognize it, take responsibility for it, and try not to do it again.
Okay, all right, thanks. And okay, here's another one. How can you parent a child who is a narcissist?
Yeah, that's a fun one. Parenting a narcissistic child is very difficult. Remember, we can't officially diagnose a child as having narcissism until 18, which is enormously frustrating for a lot of parents out there, especially when they see the traits at a much younger age. The irony of that diagnosis is that although we can't officially diagnose till 18, they have to have had the traits starting at age 15 all the way through. So you will see the early warning signs of narcissism even at a young age. So parenting a narcissistic child means that you just have to not have any emotion with them. That is the most important thing, and you must be very fair and clear about your discipline with the child. If you can write it down, that usually helps, so that it's very organized and across the board. And you can't, don't ask them to say I'm sorry, because they will just learn to say I'm sorry just as a way to say it without ever really meaning it. We don't want people to do that. That's the last thing we want. We want genuine apologies all the time. So as a parent, if a kid can't say they're sorry for what they've done, don't make them say I'm sorry. Rather, accept the fact that they can't do it and just say, I'm sad that you can't do that right now. Hopefully one day you'll be able to get that. And that will help to diminish and take away some of the tension and frustration that exists in the parenting.
Okay, well, my goodness, we have 1 minute left. We have one question. Let's go for it. Okay. Are females more covert than males? And males actually overt, or does it vary in their personalities and traits?
That's a great question, and it actually does vary in their personalities. So you have some people who are naturally more on the dominant side, and have other people who are naturally more on the suppressive side. And so depending on which side of the scale that you are on, it could be male or female. And from everything we've read in studies and looked at, it is across the board. It is half and half. It is evenly mixed. So you can be either male or female on that side.
Great. Okay, thanks. Wow. Okay, it is actually 8 o'clock. We almost never run over time, Christine, and I think this shows so much enthusiasm for this topic and your responses. People are really appreciative of your answers. And so here's the thing. Some people might have more questions for you. How would you suggest that they get their other questions answered? Should they read your blog? Should they contact you at the phone number that's on the screen? What would you would you be willing to answer questions after the webinar concludes?
My phone number is not set up because it's office, and so it's automatically going to go to voicemail at this time. But if you want to contact me, yes, you can go to the website, growwithchristine.com. There are several different ways that you can reach out to me. There's a Facebook page that you can ask me questions on. You can ask me questions through Twitter. You can go to Exhausted Woman through PsychCentral, and you can ask me questions through the comment section there. So those would, and my email is also included on the growwithchristine.com website.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And my goodness, yes, we have run out of time. So you can see my screen now, I think. Yes? PsychCentral's YouTube channel?
Yes.
All right, great. Well, listen, everyone, thanks for hanging in there. We're just a little bit over time, but again, I think it's been a very, very important topic to cover, and I didn't get my question answered, so I might have to email you. I'd like to remind everyone that the replay of tonight's webinar will be posted at our YouTube channel later this week. And I would very, very much like to thank PsychCentral, first of all, for hosting the webinar. We do have a webinar once a month. It's generally speaking the last Monday of every month. We have covered a wide variety of topics. So do check out our replays and check back in at the end of August. It'll be the last Monday in August. And tonight's presenter, as we know, is Christine Hammond, and I want to thank you so, so much, Christine, for doing this. It was just terrific.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. I loved it.
And everybody check out her website and all the rest of the materials that she has. And of course, last of all, thanks everyone for coming tonight and joining us at our live session. And thanks to everyone who's listening to the replay. And Christine, I'll share, we've got a lot of positive feedback. Thanks, it was fun. Take care. And so on that positive note, hope to see you all again next month. And thanks again. Good night.
Thanks. Good night.